It is a draft Tuesday here on Locked On Magic. Why Tristan Da Silva just seems like the perfect Orlando Magic player. And who else are the favorites? We're actually going to run through a mock draft on today's episode. And what is the purpose of the draft this year for the Orlando Magic? We'll get to all that today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is June 3rd. It will be June 4th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to talk draft. It is Draft Tuesday. Why Tristan Da Silva seems like the perfect fit for the Orlando Magic, and why that just makes it feel so unlikely that he's going to be there at 18 or 19, whatever at 18 when the Magic pick. We're going to do that, plus go through some of the other options by going through a mock draft on the ESPN mock draft tool. So we're going to do that live here coming up in just a moment. And then we'll ponder a little bit about what the purpose of the draft is for the Magic this year anyway. We're going to get to all that coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. If you have been through any mock draft, any site that does mock drafts, could be me, could be someone else, could be whoever, inevitably, at least before this past week, inevitably you're going to see the Orlando Magic connected to Tristan Da Silva. And you might be asking yourself, well, who is this guy? Why is everyone mocking him to the Magic? Tristan Da Silva seems like the obvious choice for the Orlando Magic. Seems like the guy that everyone has pinpointed and says, that is an Orlando Magic player. That is a Jeff Weltman player. And regardless, and we'll get to maybe what's going to be behind this Magic pick here in a minute, regardless of anything else, when you're looking at talent, when you're looking at players that fit the profile that the Magic have, and you're looking at players who could potentially fill a need for this Magic team, Tristan Da Silva does indeed check a lot of boxes. The Colorado senior last year played all 34 games for the Buffaloes, averaged 16 points per game, averaged 5.1 rebounds per game, 2.4 assists per game, shot 49.3% from the floor, including 39.5% from three on 4.8 attempts per game. He's a career 38.6% three-point field goal shooter and shot 83.5% from the line. Granted, small sample size, just 3 attempts per game, but a good free throw percentage is usually a good sign that a player will develop into a solid three-point shooter. Tristan Da Silva has gotten a lot of comparisons to, frankly, he's gotten comparisons to Franz Wagner. I would call him a less athletic Franz Wagner. He is a smart player, high basketball IQ, someone who makes the right play, doesn't try to do too much, but can assert himself and be aggressive. And while he may not be able to create his own shot in the way that Franz can, give him the space, give him the time. He will make good decisions. He will make shots when he's left open, and he will make the right pass and the right play. This is the kind of player the Magic are looking for. This is the kind of player everybody is looking for. And that's why it feels more and more and more likely that Da Silva is going to be gone before the Magic pick. I actually have him, I think, where do I have him going on my mock draft? Give me a sec to pull my mock draft up here, which we'll be publishing on Orlando Magic Daily. I have him actually going to Portland a couple picks before the Magic well before the Magic at 11 or 12. I'm really, really high on Da Silva, and you'll see when my mock draft comes out on Orlando Magic Daily. The guys that I'm kind of high on for the Magic, I tend to be a little bit higher on in the draft. So we'll talk a little bit about what other options are available for the Magic when we get to our mock draft simulation here in a minute. It does feel, however, that Tristan Da Silva is like the obvious choice for the Magic. He checks all those boxes, the size, the versatility, the IQ, all those things. And on top of it, he's a player that does seem like could contribute pretty quickly. He is a player who does all the things the Magic like from their forwards. And that is really all you can ask for in the draft. We'll get into a little bit of draft philosophy here toward the end of the show. But what you're looking for from the draft, what you're looking for is a player that can contribute ultimately. A player that fits your philosophy, whether that's going to fit your philosophy immediately and add to your roster, or it's going to take some time. You're looking for someone that fits and has purpose within the team. And let me tell you this. Da Silva may not be flashy. He may not stand out. He may not have superstar or all-star potential written on him. And there's a few players in the Magic's range that could be a little bit bigger swings. Tristan Da Silva is going to get you on base. Going to get you on base as they did in Moneyball. He is someone that's going to be in the right spots and be a solid player. And it's this reason that he seems like the obvious choice, regardless of whether the Magic need another forward, because they got Paolo, they got Franz, they got Jet Howard, who needs minutes. They've got Jonathan Isaac, obviously, who's a big part of this team. Caleb Houston still hanging around here. I still think the Magic will chase after another forward, either through the draft or in free agency. They're still they got a very crowded roster, period. But Da Silva would immediately impact this team, would immediately help this team. And that is something you cannot ignore. There's going to be a lot made about him being a senior. And there's some upperclassmen in this draft. This is a good draft for upperclassmen, whether you're looking at Tristan Da Silva, whether you're looking at Dalton Connect, whether you're looking at Tyler Kolek, I think, went multiple years from Marquette. Deron Holmes, who slipped to the second round, but I think is still a very, very good player. There are a lot of guys with experience in this draft. And I don't think we should overlook that. Who are the rookies that have made impact in the playoffs and made impact for playoff teams? For the Magic, we can easily point to Courtney Lee back in 2009, the last time the Magic drafted a senior, by the way. But you look at Christian Brown from Denver, immediately made an impact, was ready to step in and play at a high level in the role that he was given. Jaime Jaquez had been playing big minutes. A lot of questions about his shooting, a lot of questions about his athleticism, stepped into Miami and made an immediate impact. Frankly, when I look at Tristan Da Silva, I don't think he was as good as Jaime Jaquez was in college. But when I look at Tristan Da Silva, I see a player in the mold of Jaime Jaquez. Someone who can make an impact quickly. And you just hope Miami doesn't get him. But someone that knows what they're doing and knows what they're capable of doing. Da Silva seems like the obvious choice for this Magic team. He seems like the obvious option, the obvious player to chase, the obvious player that the Magic could bring into the fold and have be a huge impact pretty quickly. Obviously, though, it's the draft. And the obvious choice doesn't always work out that way. And if it's obvious to us, it's obvious to everyone else how good this kid could be. And that is going to mean the Magic have to be prepared for who else. So if Tristan Da Silva is not the answer, or Tristan Da Silva is not available, because I don't think the Magic are looking to trade up in this draft. If Tristan Da Silva is not available, who are the other options? Let's do a mock draft using the ESPN tool. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. The NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup Final are set. Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks, the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. All the NBA Finals wagers that you want are available on FanDuel. Right now, they have the Celtics as 6.5-point favorites for game one. Boston going at -220 to win the series. Boston, pretty heavy, not heavy favorites. Dallas only +184. That means you're almost getting 2-to-1 odds on that. Jason Tatum, the favorite to win NBA Finals MVP. And there's plenty more that you can get from FanDuel to get you all set up for the NBA Finals. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Again, you get $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more with any winning $5 bet. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time working on your computer. You listen to podcasts. You listen to any sports information you can. I can tell you the best place to get sports information, to get the best sports analysis is from the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel. It's a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories in sports from the local experts who know their team best. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are officially in June. We are officially in draft month. Free agency also on the horizon. We'll get to some more free agency stuff tomorrow. But we're officially in June now, 3 weeks away from the NBA draft, 3 weeks from Wednesday. It's going to come pretty quick. We got to know everybody. We got to know everything. We got to know all the possibilities when it comes to this draft. The Magic could very well trade the number 18th pick. We'll get to how the Magic could position themselves with this pick as well. But there is a lot to work through. And there are a lot of players to break down. And so a lot of these mock drafts, a lot of these, a lot of the early mock drafts had Tristan Da Silva going to Orlando. And it really did seem like it was a perfect match. But the Magic got to be ready for everybody. And so I think we're going to do this periodically throughout the next 3 weeks. And it won't be just on Draft Tuesday. If I'm out of ideas, we'll do one of these. ESPN just released a fantastic new tool. To kind of simulate a mock draft, a live mock draft. Of course, we'll be doing one of those with the Locked On Podcast Network in all likelihood. But here it is. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my screen. I will try and narrate what's going on. The NBA Draft 2024 simulator. We're going to play as the Magic and see what options we get. So we're going to go fast here. We're going to load this draft, see what we get. And here we go, starting the draft. So taking a look, Orlando on the board. I don't think I have a timer here. Our guy, Tristan Da Silva, taken 15th by Miami. Drafts. But this is exactly what we wanted to see. We wanted to see what scenarios and what options we have. Other players that we'd be looking at in this draft are Portland taking Devin Carter at 14, Philadelphia taking Jacoby Walter at 16, Jared McCain going to the Lakers at 17. All point guard options, all things that the Magic need. And while I think the Magic are looking for a veteran point guard, getting Jared McCain, who's an excellent shooter, would be fantastic. Devin Carter, big guard. Really like his physicality. Really love what he does there. What he can do there. He becomes a real option. Tristan Da Silva, obviously a favorite. Jacoby Walter, a really interesting guard prospect. Excellent defender. Really good athlete. Three-point shot. The percentages aren't there, but he is a solid three-point shooter. Needs to improve his balance a little bit, but an interesting prospect, especially considering what the Magic like to do. But here's who we have on our board. And this is ESPN's board here. Obviously, you have Zach Edey, the center from Purdue. I don't think there's a lot of debate about Zach Edey. He's 7'4", obviously a great shot blocker. But can he scale up to the NBA? That's going to be the ultimate question for him. And you either believe in him or you don't. I'm sure there are going to be people in my comments that say, "Oh, in this situation, take Zach Edey. McCain's off the board. Da Silva's off the board. Take Zach Edey." And I'm not gonna complain about that. I would not do it. I'm not a Zach Edey believer, especially for this Magic team. I think they want a little bit more versatility. They want a guy they want a center who can play around a little bit. And people are not going to like the suggestion I have for a potential free agent in that case, but. I think for the Magic Sport Center, they need a veteran because Wendell Carter is going to miss 15 to 20 games. Johnny Furphy, really interesting product for guard from Kansas. Really struggled with injuries late in the year, so maybe we can't hold everything completely against him. But when he went into the starting lineup for Kansas shortly after they lost to UCF, Really dynamic driver and cutter, really smart player. He would be except for his shooting, he's like a 34% three-point shooter in college. Except for his shooting, he would be a really solid pick at this spot too. A lot of people will pitch for Kyle Filipowski. He's listed as a power forward here on ESPN. I don't quite see that. He's a smart player. You can run a lot of things hub through him. His offensive game is, I think, very limited to pick and rolls. So I don't really have him high on my board. And again, I think that the Magic should go veteran instead of young guy. Bub Carrington, point guard from Pitt, really, really good playmaker. He's an interesting catch and shoot guy. 3-point percentages are not there. Free throw percentage is not there either, but really solid, really kind of solid player. You got Yves Missy here, great shot blocker. Kel'el Ware, also a great shot blocker at the center spot. Baylor Shireman from Creighton. Keep an eye on him. Another senior, another guy who's an excellent three-point shooter, was excellent throughout his 4 years in college. Keep an eye on Baylor Shireman from Creighton. We may circle back to him. But in this situation, and this is kind of the situation that I actually got in the mock draft that I have going up on Orlando Magic Daily as well, I'm going to go with Keshawn George. And Keshawn George, to me, is an upside play. And I'll explain it a little. I'll explain how the Magic should approach this draft a little bit here in a minute. But I would go with Keshawn George of Miami. Keshawn George, really, really young player, still relatively new to the game, born in Switzerland, still kind of getting a feel for the game. He averaged only 7.6 points per game this season. Only played 23 minutes per game. Started half of Miami's games. In ACC play, he averaged only 9 points per game, starting most of those games. Shot 44% from floor, but 43.2% from three. 71.4% from foul line, but on very, very low volume. Keshawn George is super, super raw and super, super young. He's still kind of refining his skills, but he has that one skill that we all say we want really badly. He has that one skill that I think everybody says this Magic team needs. He is a shooter. That is the one thing he does really, really well so far. The rest of it is unplayed putty. 6'8", 6'11" wingspan, 6'10.75" wingspan. He's listed 6'8". I think he's actually 6'5" without shoes, but long wingspan. He is, to me, if the Magic are going to make kind of a big cut with this draft, Keshawn George is the guy I go with because he gives you that shooting skill that you need. That's something you probably already have in the bag with him. And now you give him some time to develop. You don't worry about him this year. This is Jet Howard and Caleb Houston's show. You don't worry about him this year. You park him in Osceola for a year. See if he can develop a little bit of an on-ball game. He still gets kind of muscled around a little bit, and physicality bothers him because he's still relatively new to basketball. But this is why you have the G League. This is why the Osceola Magic exist. To give a player like Keshawn George that little extra development time. Look, he's got to cash in. He's got to make his money at this point, but he is an excellent three-point shooter. And I think that with the upside to be a better driver, a better defender, a better scorer, on top of all that, so you can eventually kind of groom him into a sixth man. To me, that is the big step. And that's why I have Keshawn George really high on my board. If Tristan Da Silva is off the board, if Jared McCain is off the board, even if Devin Carter's off the board, I'll put those three guys ahead of him. If those three guys are off the board, I'm not that interested in Zach Edey. I'm not that interested in Yves Missy. I'm a little interested in Kel'el Ware, but everything I hear about that, the motor issues keep coming up with people I talk to about him. You could convince me on Baylor Shireman. You could convince me on Bub Carrington. Keshawn George has the size. He has the potential, the growth potential. And with this pick, this is like, if the Magic are keeping the 18th pick, it feels like a free pick. Because the Magic still have Anthony Black and Jet Howard to develop. And so to me, Keshawn George is the guy that I'm focused on. Is the guy that I want to develop, I want to grow, and I want to bring into this fold. Because here is the bigger secret about this draft and about the Magic. What are they trying to accomplish with this draft pick? Because what they're trying to accomplish and what they're willing to wait on has very clearly changed. And so we're going to talk, to close the show today, about how that change has occurred, coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at BetterHelp. Look, we all have something we need to get off our chest. It's only natural, it's the end of the the end of Magic season is a frustrating time for me because I don't have basketball to watch anymore. Don't get to see all my friends at the Kia Center. It can be a lot to hold in, and I think we're all going through a little bit of withdrawals. Like, I can admit it. I love watching other teams play. I want to see the Magic play. I love watching the Magic play. So going through a little bit of withdrawals here. We all carry around different stressors, big and small. When we keep them bottled up, it can start to affect us negatively. And so it's good to talk to people and say, like, hey, I miss this, or I want this to happen in my life. Therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest and to figure out how to work through whatever is weighing you down. I know I have benefited from therapy, even if it's just to vent and to get literally to kind of empty the brain a little bit and get all those emotions out there. I usually come out feeling a whole lot better and usually come out feeling just ready to attack my day and whatever I have to do. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Obviously, it has been a while since the Orlando Magic have had to pick this late in the draft. The last time the Magic had a pick outside of the lottery, or had a pick this low, lower than 18, it was 2017 when they picked Anzas Pasechniks and traded him to the Philadelphia 76ers. And even in that draft, the Magic had picked Jonathan Isaac with the 6th pick. The Magic have obviously made the playoffs only 3 times since Dwight Howard left. We have not had to deal with picks this late in the draft. And obviously the Magic, Chuma Okeke, Cole Anthony, and now this pick, as far as their own picks from those playoff journeys. It's a different deal. And even last year, with the Magic picking 6th and 11th, I always found it very difficult to explain to everybody that what the Magic are looking for and what the Magic are trying to draft are very, very different. I'm getting ready for the Locked On mock draft. I'm writing my notes down. I'm studying my prospects, and things will change and all that. I am getting ready for the Locked On mock draft whenever they bring that email. It's my favorite email every year. I'm trying to represent us well. People yelled at me last year for being too win now and too present focused. And I will admit that I had my very specific goals. I wanted to get a shooter, and if I could solve my center issue, I could solve my center issue. And I will defend the reasoning of what I did last year, drafting Grady Dick at number 6 and trading the 11th pick for Isaiah Hartenstein. I will defend that. I did a whole episode explaining how things had changed since we recorded that and all that. We can debate whether that was the right call or not. Things worked out okay for the Magic. But I still can't tell you how many times I have had people say, what are the Magic doing with their rookies? Why isn't Jett Howard playing? Why didn't they get Anthony Black in during the playoffs? And some of that I agree with. I think the Magic did a lot of really good things with Anthony Black throughout the course of the season. But ultimately, they didn't trust him for the playoffs. And that should have been trusted that was building or fostered even through spot minutes so that he would be available and would be someone they could turn to in the playoffs. Jett Howard, whether it was agreed to beforehand or something that just developed as the season went on, Jett Howard got a gap year. And so how those two rookies performed and how those two rookies played does play into how we look at this draft. This is the ultimate question we have to ask. And really the dichotomy of the two players we discussed today. If the Magic are drafting Tristan Da Silva, and we'll throw in Jared McCain, we'll throw in Tyler Kolek, we'll throw in Devin Carter, throw in Baylor Shireman, throw in Zach Edey, throw in Kyle Filipowski. If they draft a veteran player who has a very defined set of skills and already some skills that are pretty good, they're looking for a rookie that can win and help them now, a rookie that can step into the rotation and play. And there'd be nothing wrong with doing that. That would be an aggressive play. That would be saying, we are committed to this season. We want to build this season. We believe this player can help us this season. We can't afford to give up the roster spot to someone in the G League like we did with Jett Howard. And look, the Magic survived last year. They probably should have gotten Jett some run when they could, but we're going to learn how good Jett Howard and Anthony Black are both in Summer League and in training camp. The goal for the Magic should still be this summer to make sure there is a clear pathway to playing for Anthony Black and Jett Howard. Whether that means Anthony Black just steps into Markelle Fultz's vacant minutes, or Jett Howard steps into Joe Ingles' perhaps vacant minutes, or competes with Joe Ingles for those minutes, that might be the process. That might be how things work out. But they should have a path to play. They're now second-year players. Let's see how much better they are, even if they're still going to make some mistakes and you got to kind of go with those growing pains. They should have every opportunity to play. But because they're now fighting for opportunity, who behind them is getting opportunity? The Magic may very well look at this pick, just like I said in the previous segment, and say, let's take a swing. Let's take another big swing on a talented player who might need some time. Keyshawn George, Killel Ware, perhaps. He's a sophomore. I think his skill set's more defined. A Tyler Smith, a Bobby Clinton. Players who clearly have potential. I picked him in the second round. I think he's a second-round pick, but Melvin Ajinça. These are players that have defined skill sets, that have potential, but may not quite be ready for the NBA. The G League exists to give those guys space to play when they might not play on the main roster. If you believe in what they ultimately will become in 2, maybe 3 years, and you have the patience to wait and develop them and the faith to develop them, then maybe this is a pick for the future. Maybe this is a pick that you are willing to defer. Take a player, pay him for that year, but defer their impact on the roster. Look, the Magic also have a pretty high-level two-way player in Trevelin Queen. I don't know. I don't think he signed a 2-year two-way, but I think the Magic have every intention of bringing him back. Whether it's on another two-way contract or to bring him back and give him a full roster spot would not surprise me one way or the other. Roster spots are pretty limited. I think a two-way is probably more likely. But like this philosophy is sort of the tension for the Magic because yes, they are still a young team. They are still about development and growing their group. But now they're about winning too. Now they are about trying to pick up wins and pick up victories and pick up playoff spots. Now they are about both. And you have to find a player in this draft that satisfies both or commit to one or the other. Or, you could trade the pick as part of a bigger deal to make the roster better. But this is what the draft is supposed to be about. When you're drafting at the top of the draft, when you're 1, 2, 6, whatever, when you're a lottery team, you need those picks to hit. You always need picks to hit. Don't sell it short. But you really need those picks to hit because those are the core of your team. At 18, where the Magic are drafting, we're not drafting the core of our team. So we got to ask ourselves, are we drafting a player that's going to help us today? Or are we willing to invest in an overlooked player, maybe a flawed player, who could help us in the future? And that might be the ultimate question. That might be ultimately what the Magic decide on. When we go back to our mock draft, and we look at who's available, and we'll go ahead and draft Keyshawn George here. And we look at who's available. If I can get back to it, I don't think I can. Guess not. And we look back at who's available. It's a question of who can help you now and who's going to help you down the road. That'll be the question that Jeff Weltman has to ask himself as he evaluates these prospects and what the Magic want from this draft. I want to thank you again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the Filmation podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. We're almost at 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. Who's going to be number 3,000? It could be you. Find us on YouTube at Locked On Magic. I don't have a prize for you if you're subscriber 3,000 other than just a hearty salute and thumbs up. But you can find us on YouTube as well. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, including my upcoming mock draft, it'll be up either tomorrow or Wednesday, or Tuesday or Wednesday. You can check that out at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Follow us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And even more Orlando Magic content, including my player evaluation series, check out the Orlando Magic Hub, my Patreon page. That's patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. I'm going through player evaluations right now. I'm hoping to have those done very, very soon so I can start working on draft player profiles, which we'll be doing over the course on the show as well. But you can check out all that extra content on the Orlando Magic over at the Orlando Magic Hub. That's patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And again, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to us, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, we'll jump back to free agency. The most controversial player that the Magic may be hunting this offseason, the case for and against D'Angelo Russell. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Phil Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.